delegating is not just like assigning out to someone the task. Like, okay, you do it now. I don't do it
Right.
anymore. It's not. I mean, that you could call that delegating, but health when it's done in a healthy way and a high performance way, you gotta get to the point where they're doing it as well as you're doing it.
You are listening to the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, brought to you by Salt Electrolytes. On this podcast, your host Riley Rogers, that's me, explores the stories of people who get after it, get things done, and earn their salt. You will hear from high achievers who discuss what makes them tick, how they got to where they are today, and where they are headed tomorrow. Perhaps this podcast will help you go earn your salt. We are here today with, man, probably one of my lifelong friends and business colleagues, Mark Enos. Mark is the owner of Spray and Coat Painting in Nampa, Idaho. Background here, Mark and I became a Christian in his father's church when I was 19. And Mark, I think we're, 7 years apart?
I'm 40, so something like that.
Yeah, we're 8 years apart. So, yeah,
Well, I'm
Mark was
41
11 or
on
12 years
Tuesday,
old.
so yeah, about 7.
Yeah. So, long-term friendship here. And so there's a lot of history also. In the business realm, Mark and I have also grown together. And so we, me being a little older, started into the business world, but he was close behind. And Mark's got a really cool story of how he, went through his, in this, do not let me forget to have people tell, or you tell the people about the candy bars in your locker. So that's a legend in my mind. But Mark had that business kind of entrepreneur mind from that time, from just being a child, and he just took that into adulthood. And so I want you guys to hear what Mark has to say. So, Mark, how are you, man?
Doing great. This will be fun.
Yeah, good dude. So excited for you to be on here. Um, let's jump into that. I want to know what initially in your child mind fired you up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think the candy bars in the locker room is probably a good opening story. So an old friend, Isaac DeRozier, hopefully he'll listen to this because that'd be fun. But Isaac DeRozier was an old time friend, and he got me into where we were knocking doors for the local newspaper, and every time you would
Oh,
get a subscription for the Idaho State Journal, the local newspaper, every time you would get that, they would give you the option of giving you $5. That was your commission. Or I remember, like, I can still like picture they had like a closet in the office space there, it was like under the stairs, and they would go to Costco or Sam's Club or whatever, and they would get boxes of candy, 24 packs of candy bars, and they would give you the option. So back then, I guess you could buy a box of 24 candy bars for $5 apparently, because they would let you choose, the candy bars or the $5. And so I'd go in there, and they thought it was because I was the fat kid that I was going for the candy bars, but really, it was because I was a little chubby. Uh, it was because I would take these candy bars to school. I'd put them in my locker, and then word got out pretty quick that if they went over to my locker, I would sell them a candy bar for 50 cents. And that's making me feel old now because what does a candy bar cost? Like $2.50 at the gas station now.
I don't know, man. I don't eat candy bars.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyway, so that was it. I would sell them. I'd probably eat a couple, but then maybe I'd make, $5 or $10 off the box of candy bars. And that was the selling candy out of the locker room story. And that was junior high. So that was,
Now, before you just move on past that, how did the school faculty feel about that?
I don't remember ever like getting in trouble other than I remember it just looked suspicious, right? Because I would open my locker and a bunch of people would like be like coming to my locker room. So I'm pretty sure a few people at least thought I was a drug dealer, but really I was just selling candy. So
Well, my friend, we hold that in common, right? I've been accused of being the white powder dealer for several years now, so
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I just remembered I had a locker partner. They would assign you a locker partner, and I'm pretty sure he was stealing from me. So I think I had to shut down that operation due to theft.
oh,
It was really cutting into the profits when the locker room partner was stealing from me. That was my
so he
suspicion.
was eating your inventory or he was taking your cash that you left
I
in the
think he was
locker or
still in
both?
inventory, to be honest, and so I think I had to stop because of that. I don't think I ever got busted, but I do remember that as it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of the way my brain worked. I don't, my dad didn't necessarily push me to do it, but it was just something I did kind of just as a natural thing, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that's the story.
Oh, that story always makes me happy, man. I probably have to ask you to tell it again in the future just so I can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so hometown.
Yeah.
Tell me about growing up, man.
Yeah, Pocatello. Yeah, I grew up in Pocatello. Um, Pastor's kid. So my dad was a pastor from when I was a little kid, for 25 years in Pocatello. Yeah, I grew up going to school, public school in Pocatello. It was a great city to grow up in. We'd go mountain biking, ride dirt bikes. That was kind of what you and I did first together, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if we ever did mountain biking, but we rode dirt bikes together. I think when I was in junior high. I mean, junior high, high school, because I had the KDX in junior high. So that was definitely around that 13, 14. You must have been 20, and you were just
All right.
married, and I was in junior high, and we were going out riding dirt bikes with Trevor and my dad, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, that Pocatello was where I grew up. I don't know that I'd want to try to run a business there today, but I love the proximity of the foothills and the mountains and just access to Pebble Creek and all that. Growing up, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Those are good days for sure. I refresh me because you had a lawn mowing operation too for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, so in high school, and I think my dad gets some credit here because my dad welded a trailer for a for a bicycle. So he built a trailer, very simple trailer that you could put a lawnmower and a weed eater on and pull it behind a trailer. So I think he took some old, trailer that you'd put a kid in and he modified it so I could put, do lawn mowing. I think it was before I had my driver's license. So I was probably 14, 15. And, I would just hit the neighborhood and mow lawns. Back then you'd charge $10, I think, $10 a lawn. And I did that for a couple summers. I would say that was definitely, I mean, I remember making business cards, right? You know, all that. So yeah, that was probably my first business that I had a bit. I mean, that's when it's a real business, right? If you got a business card. So I had
That's right.
business cards. I think I probably have them stashed somewhere, but I still remember the business cards. That was when we lived in Chubbuck, and yeah, so I did that at least for 1 or 2 summers. I'm not sure how far I took that, but made a few bucks.
Well, it seems like because I remember the KDX coming along, and it seemed like you had done something to earn the money for that dirt bike.
Yeah, that's very
And then
very
the first
possible.
Ford Ranger came along, and that's when things started to get real.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the Ford Ranger. Yeah, because I remember the first dirt bike was the DR 125, and I had saved up money to buy that with a paper out. So I had to paper out probably like at 12 years old, and that was like $1,100. And so I think I made about $100 a month doing the paper out. So I saved up for a year, and I bought the DR 125. The KDX 200, I don't even remember exactly, but I pretty much paid for everything. My dad was a pastor of the church. My mom was a teacher. I don't really. picture them buying me motorcycles. That just wasn't a thing. So I probably saved up for that bike doing the paper out, or sorry, doing the lawn mowing. And that was probably, yeah, like 14. That was like freshman year probably that I got that bike, somewhere around that. Because I got the Kicks 500, but that was a couple of years later. So that would have
That
been
was
like
later, yeah.
junior, senior year. Yeah. So
Well, so you saving for an entire year, man? That when you're that age, that's a huge percentage of your life, right? So that year seems like a long time. What did that experience of just continuing on being steady and sticking with your goal? What do you think that's done to you as an adult?
yeah, it's definitely an important life skill. I mean, uh, in business, just in business, or in just, even if you're not a business owner, to manage money, your personal budget, all of that. You have to be a saver. You got to be a saver to avoid debt, and um, you can borrow money, but it just changes everything. It creates risk and stress. And so I think I've always been pretty natural saver. And yeah, and I guess that's kind of where it started. It was probably some of those, buying dirt bikes. That was probably the beginning of it. Yeah.
No, I think that those kind of stories are cool because I've seen that happen with my own kids, right? Where we were the type of parents that when my kids were young, we were going through some rough business times and we're too broke to buy them anything. But then as we grew, we wanted to teach them lessons, right? And so
Yeah.
we had them do similar things where, you remember when they would buy and sell bicycles,
Oh yeah.
you know? Yeah. And so I think about that very fondly, doing the work it took to get that dirt bike and saving for a long period of time and watching what that's produced in my kids and what they've turned into now as adults, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I So tell me this: you own Spray and Coat Painting now. Um, you've turned that into how many employees do you have today?
Well, we've got about 25, about 25 here in our Boise location, and then Las Vegas has another 7 to 8. And so if you kind of add those together, there's 32 or so.
Sure. Yeah, and so let's talk about how that got started because you tell the story about your college years and how you worked. You did some painting then too, correct?
Yeah. 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 So when I was in high school, my senior year, we painted a neighbor's house. And my dad had painted when he was in his 20s. And so I don't know why exactly all of a sudden he decided to paint a house, because he hadn't done it in 10, 20 years. But he might have been saving up for something, I don't know. But he offered to paint the neighbor's house, and I remember helping him. And all I literally remember doing is just like scraping paint off the side of the house. So I don't know that I even contributed to that job, but I helped him. And then really, I think like the next year or so, um, I was probably 19, something like that. And he had a friend at church that needed his house painted, and somehow I just kind of got volunteered to do it. So he's like, my son Mark, he'll paint your house. So I had like no experience. I rented a sprayer from the local paint store, Sherwin Williams or Columbia back then. They would rent you a sprayer. So I just remember renting a sprayer and just painting this guy's house. I can't imagine how bad it was. I mean, it had to have been the worst paint job ever, because looking back, I just had like no training. But my dad just sort of was like, and I'm sure the price was right. You know what I mean? Uh, Young guy comes, he offers to paint your house. It's cheap. You're just whatever. And that's probably what it was. But I did that, and then I think it was kind of like, oh, like I can do this. This isn't that hard, right? And so then I would just go knock on doors, and I would just sort of, again, I made some business cards, and I just used the name M&R because that was what my dad had his business called, M&R Enterprises, M&R Painting, something like that. And I just started knocking on doors. I remember I was on 12th Street over by the university, ISU, and I actually drove by this house recently. And it actually looks, it's actually a really nice home. Um, but it's this big white home. And I knock on the door, and I find out later he's an attorney, and he was actually like shopping to get his house painted. So I knock on his door. I'm 19. I just said, "Hey, like, do you want your house painted?" Like it was, I don't even know what I said, but and immediately he was like, "Well, yeah, I do. I need my house painted." So I gave him a price. It was $1,800, and I just remember standing there at the front door with him, and he just looks at me. He says, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure you'll do it for 1,800?" And I just remember being like so confident, like, "Yes, sir, I will." you know. And so anyway, like in today's dollars, it would have been like $20,000. Like that's what I would charge today to paint this house. Uh, but I just, I had a couple young kids that were in the youth group. One of them, his name was Jesse, and I think it was Jesse and Chase Duncan, and I recruited them as my helpers. And I just remember just 10-hour days, like for 2 weeks straight, and I had guys helping me, and we just scraped and scraped because the whole house was just shredding paint off of us. We had to just like hand scrape this big monster mansion of a house, and then we just painted it. I mean, we were sanding lead based paint. I'm sure, no mask. Looking bad, it was probably pretty bad for our health. But anyways, when I finished the job, I remember he tipped me like hundreds of dollars because he got such a good deal. But I looked at it as like, hey, I made $15 an hour, and everybody else is making 7. So look at me, you know.
You were riding high.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the greatest thing about when you just start from nothing and you go is you're not getting rich at the beginning. You're not making tons of money, but you're just building that muscle of like looking somebody in the eyes and saying, "Yeah, I'll solve this problem for you." And here's the price, and I honored that price. I finished it, and and yeah, I made a few bucks, but you build, and you just build confidence through that. There's just some work ethic that you build through those experiences, and there were several homes I painted in Pocatello in those summers as a college student, but that one really stuck out. It was one of the first. And but yeah, I drove by it like just last summer because I was just really curious. And there it is. It's like somebody's like really taking good care of this home because it's like right next to University, 12th Street. It's in a really nice location. Still bright white. The whole thing's white. And yeah, it was a good experience.
That's super cool. So this was through your college years, and you said you started knocking doors at the beginning for the paper subscriptions.
Yeah.
Um, so by this point, you're feeling pretty comfortable knocking doors. Sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. I remember knocking a lot of doors. I even remember in elementary school where they would have contests, and I don't even know what it was, but you're selling something, or it was probably like a sponsorship. I'm gonna run a mile, and will you sponsor me for for every mile I run or whatever. But I remember doing that in elementary school, and I remember liking that challenge. I remember like being like, oh, okay, like I can do this, and I'd go out, and I remember being one of the top door knockers, for whatever fundraisers, and this is probably at like 11, 12 years old. Um, and so, I think I was just exposed at it at a young enough age that it was like, this isn't that big a deal, because man, there's a lot of people that, would not, that do not want to knock doors, right? Like that is not a desirable
Right.
thing. But I think I did it. I just did it at a young enough age and did it often enough. I mean, we haven't got to this part of the story, but you and I knocked some doors together.
Hey, business owners, I want to talk to you for a second. Do you have a retail space or a pro shop inside your business? If so, I want you to know something. Your customers are buying electrolyte supplements. The problem is they're not buying them from you. Salty Electrolytes can help with that with their wholesale program. They can bring those sales to you in-house so your customers get the electrolytes they deserve from the company they love most. All you have to do is head over to goearnyoursalt.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click on the link that says apply for wholesale. Or it's possible that there's a link in the description of this podcast. And now, my friends, go earn your salt.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, literally, I knocked doors selling whatever, fundraising for school. I knocked doors selling newspaper. I knocked doors selling lawn mowing. I knocked doors selling painting. I knocked doors selling windows and siding. So, I've knocked a few doors in my life. Yeah, that's definitely
I,
part
you know, I talk
of it.
about this, and you kind of joked around about the business card making it real, making a business real. Um, where you and I've had enough meetings together and talked about this stuff enough. It's when you make your first sale is what makes a business real, right?
Yeah,
You just have a business card. Well, anybody can do that part, but the hard stuff is getting out there and knocking doors, and
yeah,
so few people are willing to do it that they fail to launch.
yeah, yeah.
I was just talking about that with a guy this morning. So talk about how that continued.
A funny story about knocking doors. I remember this was like maybe 3 years into the business of spray and coat painting. So this would have been 2011 or so. And we just had a week or two. So I had three, four, five guys working for me. We just had a slow week for some reason. We just didn't have a job that week. So I took the guys and I said, "Hey, we're gonna go knock doors," and they were just like, "What?" And I was like, "Come on, it's fine." We'd done a lot of work in this neighborhood. This is like Legends. It's over on Eagle Road and McMillan. And I remember Dan was out there. He hated it. He was like, no, he did not want anything to do with it. But I had this guy Carson, Cody, a couple guys, and like I just showed them. I was like, let's just you knock on the door. You say, hey, we paint a lot of homes around in this neighborhood, and we just wanted to see, if you need your house painted. It's not that hard. But I remember doing that, and then shortly thereafter, they quit. They're like, we're starting our own painting business," because it was like it wasn't both of them. It was just Cody, but I just showed him. It was like this magic secret. He was like, "Oh, like you know, he kind
You
of
can
must have
just
had a
do
little
this.
entrepreneurial bug in him too." And so, but just me showing him one day, like empowered him to be like, "I'm going to do this." Now he didn't make it. Like he didn't stick it out. I remember he went back and was going to become an EMT or whatever. But it takes more than that. But it is a key. Like just going out, whatever that knocking doors can be a little bit figurative, right? And sometimes it's just physically knocking on doors. But that is a key. And I 100% say that was one of the keys to me doing this today was me knocking on doors. Like let me tell another door. Since we're talking door knocking, this is my favorite door knocking story.
Don't get too personal here.
So this was another neighborhood, really actually like 5 Mile and Overland. I'm trying to remember. This is my old neighborhood that I used to live in off of Owl Ridge there, and very similar to the Legends I was just telling you about. Same era, same type of homes. And I'm in there. I'm knocking on doors, and I remember this lady, like she cracks the door open, just like barely lets me in, right? And she's like, "Oh no, like, she's like, my husband's not home. You have to talk to my husband." I was like, "Okay, well, when is he gonna be home?" And she's like, "Oh, not till like 9 or something like that." So like, "Okay, no problem." This is like 7 p.m. So I go back at like 9 p.m. I knock on the door again, and I remember he's home, and they were open to it. I did a walkthrough, and I remember walking away at whatever 9:45 with a check in my hand and a contract signed. And it was just that was like for me that was probably 2010, and that was that persistence of just being like, okay, I'll be back. you know and anyway, that was definitely one of my favorite door knocking experiences, and just I guess maybe a confidence boosting experience to do. And so anyway, we can
That's so
move on
cool,
from the
man.
door
You've never
knocking.
told me that one.
Yeah, I can still. I mean, I could drive you right to that house. It was a light blue house. Know exactly where it's at. I remember I remember the lady. I remember the next door neighbor. I painted their home twice. Um, anyway, yeah, but those are the early years. Those are 15 years ago. I painted thousands of homes, thousands. I don't. I remember very few of them, but that's like those are homes that are just like very clearly in my brain because those are key moments.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think, like how you said, the door knocking is kind of a figurative thing, right? Because it's not always door knocking. There's multiple ways to get out there and get yourself in front of people, but all of them have in common they're uncomfortable. They take you out of your comfort zone, and then it's just hard. It's like working out, man. It's like you never want to. You never want to get up and do that stuff, but when you do, you always feel good afterwards.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially when you take a check home, huh?
yeah, yeah. That was a good one. So yeah, so that was the early years, and I mean, really, we skipped the part where I worked for you. Are we gonna hit that at all, or?
Go ahead, man. Be nice.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's an important part of the journey because for me, I saw painting houses as 100% just a college job. It was just a summer gig. Make enough money to pay for college, and that was it. Like I had no desire to continue the painting business, no thoughts of no plan, zero plan to continue to do it. But when I finished up school at ISU, this is December 2008, so 2009, I came to work for you and doing sales for a siding window company, right? And I remember coming out of that because it was like, I was very, I had nobody like teaching me how to do anything. So it was me just very just off the cuff, talking to people. But we had like a plan. Like you were like, okay, we're going to sell a certain way, and we're going to present, and we're not the cheap guy, we're the premium guy. We're the company that's going to give them the best quality, the best value, and we're probably going to be the most expensive. And that's okay because we're going to give them the most, and it's going to be worth it. And not every customer is going to buy, but the customers that want quality, that want that premium service, then they'll pay for it because that's what we offer. And so we did that for you for a year and a half, right? It was about a year and a half through 2000, 2009, basically, right? 2000 or no 2000. Oh, I'm mixed up. So 2008. So I graduated December 2007. I came worked for you spring of 2008. So we did that for about a year and a half. And I presented to customers sometimes 2, 3 times a day, right? 2, 3 hour
Mm-hmm.
presentations, and with the goal of selling the job. And so when I this is another kind of funny story. So when I as that business wrapped up, we don't have to get into all the details, but that business closed, right? And so I was summer 2009. I got married that summer, and I needed some money, right? And so I was knocking on doors again. I was going back to Pocatello. I was painting houses, but I was living in Boise. So then I was knocking on doors in Boise. But you when we sold for your company, we were in a suit and tie, you know, which is
That's right.
is crazy to think back. So when I was painting, I just took everything that I learned and I just used it for painting. So I don't know if you know this, but I was selling painting jobs in a suit and tie. Did you know that?
I did not.
Like today, I mean, the average person who gives somebody a bid, when they're for painting, literally has paint all over their clothes because they're just a painter, right?
Yeah.
And so I was going and I was giving people's bids with a tie on, the dress shirt, the whole thing. And it's weird. Like I don't think I did it very long because I kind of was like, I realized this is not normal. But I did it, and I remember going to a Sherwin-Williams will do these lunches, right? They'll have a grill at one of the local Sherwin-Williams. They'll have hamburgers and they'll just feed guys, right? So I remember going to one of those, and I remember the guy looking at me and be like, "So, are you like a sales rep for Sherwin or like?" Because I was in a suit.
Did you address like one of
Are
them?
you like
Not
an executive for Sherwin-Williams? Like, who are you? You know? And I remember like, no, I'm spraying coat, you know. So it's funny that I did that, but I just, I didn't know any different, and so I just used what I knew, But I went in there and I was selling. I just took everything I learned selling for you, and I just took it. I applied it to the painting world. I don't know that I stuck out like a sore thumb, I bet, but I was selling like these premium options and upgrades, and people like that, and I think that was a real key for me when I was selling was I was like I was not doing it the way everybody else was doing it. And I didn't know that. But looking back, I was weird. I heard a quote the other day about marketing, and they said, better is not better, different is better. I was like,
different
oh,
is
that's
better. But
interesting.
you were that.
I was different. I was maybe not better, but I was different. So those are the early days of just yeah, just knocking on doors. I remember, you know, I see we bought leads from, was it called Service Magic back then, or something like that? Does that ring a bell? Remember that? You pay per lead. I think it was like Service Magic or whatever. They changed their name a couple times, but basically it was a company that, was this is the early days of the internet, which is again makes it sound very old, Riley. But what they were doing is they were showing up on the Google for painters, and people would go there and they would fill out their information. It was a little bit tricky. It was like, oh yeah, like get a quote on a painting job. Give us your name. You hit next. Oh, we need your address. Oh, hit next. Whatever. And then pretty soon you've given all their information. So I remember we were paying for those leads, for windows and siding, and we were paying like $50 a lead or $20 a lead. So I got on in the painting world. I just did the same thing. I pretty much just stole everything I could from you, and so I did that for the painting. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna make my own website. So I started my own website, and this was just in a season where not many painters were doing it. And so I got sprayingcoat.com. My sister made the website, and I built a form that was just like the form that Service Magic used. It started with these real generic, hey, give me your name and what type of project you have. They'd hit next. Oh, I need your email. Oh, I need your phone number, whatever. And then I would get leads. And because I did that early on, I had the number one spot for painters Boise, you know, and it was just like taking something that I learned from somewhere else, and I said, well, I'm just going to apply it here. And that created momentum for us online. And it was kind of like the next phase from knocking on doors was getting a website, getting traffic, doing SEO, all of that. And there wasn't a whole lot of competition on the SEO side back then. And those were some key moments.
Yeah. Man, dude, I'm glad you were able to take something of value from the from the
A lot of
siding
value, man.
experience.
I still got the sales bag.
You do?
Yeah. I
Oh man, we
still
should
have the
put that in a
sales
glass
bag.
case.
I don't know why. It's hilarious, but I'll have to show it to you sometime. I might give you.
Well, so for the audience's sake, I started my adult working life in the siding industry, putting siding in on homes and windows. And yeah, I grew up another company that I worked for a lot of years, and then I bought a branch of that company. I bankrupted a branch of that company. Um, for me, these years that Mark is talking about very fondly, for me, were not fond years. they,
Sure.
they were some of the oh, learning the hard way experiences for me. So to hear you talk about it more fondly is kind of fun because I was in a pity party of failure at that point in my life, and yet you were able to take something valuable away from it. So it's a silver lining for me.
Yeah.
I'll have to tell that story on here one of these days. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother story. So that's a good one.
yeah,
It's a good one.
well, tell me this, man. You said you got married. Was it '08 you got married?
No, 2008 was the first year in Boise, but then 2009 is when we got married that following summer. So Wendy, my wife now, she moved down, um, yeah, early 2009, and then we got married in July of 2009.
Nice. And then you've got, tell us about your family.
Yeah, so we got married in 2009, and then we've got three kids now. So our oldest is Sam, and so he's 11, and then Colin is our second son. He is 9, and then our daughter Maylee is 7. So three kids, and still in the Boise Meridian area. Um, yeah, yeah, moved around 4 times, all within the same basically mile or two. So it's kind of funny, West Boise Meridian area, and that's where we've been for the last 16 years. Just yeah, raising a family, building a business. There's all these different seasons. It's funny. Somebody was asking me just the other day. They're kind of wanting to start a business. Kind of feeling like stuck, like not really doesn't don't really have a career. Love the idea of owning a business, but don't know how to get started. And they're just asking me. So like, I think a lot of times they see it as like, it probably really sucked for a long time, but now it's okay. Like now you're doing good, and they're trying to like figure out like, so when did it get easy? Like when did it get easy? And that's funny. I think back and it's like, well, it's just there's just all these different layers of like you hit certain lids, right? You hit a certain ceiling. And for me, I had I hired Dan. This is like 2010, so like we're about a year and a half in, and I hired Dan to come work for me. And he was a beast. He just like he loved the painting. He was way better at it than me. And so he was like the guy. He was my foreman. He was running the jobs, and like we just started adding guys. And so we're running like a crew of 5. We didn't know any better, and it was just Dan and a bunch of helpers, and I'm out hitting the streets trying to sell jobs, and which today is it's a horrible model, but we just didn't know any better. And so, I remember a friend of ours, his name's Joe Patty. He's in the mortgage business, but we're sitting there and he's like, he's kind of a business guy too. And he's like, oh, so when are you guys going to add some crews? And I remember sitting there and just being like, I don't know. Like I remember I told him I'd have to get a lot smarter because yeah, like I don't know how we would do that. We're just a big crew and we just go and we knock out jobs. And, so today we've got here in Boise about 8 crews, and, and it's just funny to think back. Like I just didn't know like how else I could do it. It was just that was my world, and then there's these different things, when I moved away from doing all the sales, this was around 2016, and, I'm hiring project managers and, hiring office people, and, there was just different challenges. And, know, but I want to like say is, every part of the journey has been fun and challenging, and I've had some flexibility in my schedule the whole time. That was kind of part of what this guy was asking. Is like, because at some point you kind of arrive and you have flexibility and you're making money, and like how long does that take? And I just look at that and say, you know what? I feel like I was making good money all along. And at the beginning, I felt like I was making good money. And, it was a lot less back then, but I was pretty happy and I was working hard. And it's no different than today. It just looks a lot different because I've learned a lot. But, um, but it's just interesting how, people's perspective of business from the outside. I think sometimes they think that, it's just going to be a horrible grind, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, now you're established and now you're good. And I think some of that comes back to the pricing model that I learned that from you. It was like you don't have to be cheap to be valuable service. And so I just wasn't. And so not that I charged a lot more, but like I charged enough that it was profitable all the way from the beginning to now. And construction, it's changed a lot, all the, all that. But so it's a lot more than it was back then. But anyway, that's my perspective. I don't know. What do you think about what I'm saying right now?
No, it's what I like about hearing your perspective on this was I always felt like whenever I would take that business idea to our team in the window and siding company, the idea that we were going to be the premium product and we're going to be more than likely the most expensive one bidding on any project. I felt like, man, like I was swimming upstream because that's most people do not think that way. And you said earlier, better isn't better, but different is better. And for us, it was that just made more sense to me. It's like, yeah, I may sell less projects, but the projects I do sell will be that just have a better margin in them. And there's this really interesting thing I learned over the years, and you tell me if you agree with this after all your years of experience, but there's this really cool sector of people who when they want something that's premium, they're willing to pay for it, but they've worked hard for it, and they seem to be people who I don't know how to put this politely. I'm just not going to. I'm just going to say it. They're not entitled people. And so if there's a problem, they're easier to work with. They weren't out there trying to find the cheapest person and complain about everything they did. They just seem to be an easier customer base to work with. And I started to learn that over the years. So it's fun to hear. I'd like to hear more about what you think of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea. Man, we deal with just so many different personalities in our world, and different types of projects. The I don't know. I think that I think that we find that some people. I'll say it this way. Here's be my perspective. Some customers, and where it's not all about the money.
10,000 hours is a steep mountain to climb to become a master, especially when the task at hand puts a relentless demand on your body. There is nothing casual about the sport. It's all in, all effort, all focus. It takes a lot from you, but the reward is unmatched. Mastery of oneself, an acute understanding of your weaknesses with an explosive sense of your strengths. Being able to complete the climb to mastery requires the proper nutrition. This is why it's important to take in a potent blend of electrolytes that is in tune with your output and brings strength to your goals. This potent blend is only found in salt electrolytes. Salt targets your depleted electrolyte levels with a boost of hydration and health. It gives your body the baseline recovery it needs.
It's about like, hey, I trust you. Um, and maybe about the premium service. It may just be more about the trust. Like I feel comfortable with you guys. I trust you, and the money is not a big deal, um, because it's more about the work. You know, my one of my favorite stories from this is my wife Wendy's late father, Greg. He passed away in 2013, 2014. But he told me this story. He was in the piano business. He fixed, restored, and sold pianos. And what he would
Mm-hmm.
tell me, he's like, yeah, I'll be talking to somebody. They want their piano refinished, and this piano might a lot of times the pianos they're from the 20s, you know, and they're going to get their piano stripped and refinished, and it's pretty expensive. And he would tell the customer, he would say, you know what, um, the money, I have to charge for this, but like let's not focus all on the money. Let's focus on the piano and the work that we're going to do, because this piano is going to stay in your family for generations. And the
Mm-hmm.
money is you're going to give me money, and I'm going to spend it on, I'm going to pay my mortgage, I'm going to pay my bills, and then the money's just gone. Like a year from now, 2 years from now, like the money just is irrelevant. It's just we have to exchange it. It's part of business. But the piano, it's all about the piano. And so he was a good salesman, but he made that point, and I've used that, and I've even told that story to customers. And I remember one time I was selling a garage floor coating, and they were worried about the quality, and I told them that story, and I said, you know what, that's for me, it's about like doing this well, and let's not obsess over the money side of it. It's about doing this well. And I remember like I couldn't even finish that story, and they put their credit card out. It was just like instantly like, okay, we want to buy from you. And I was like, I hadn't even like built the quote yet. It was so funny. Um, so I think people resonate with that. And
Yeah.
my going back to what you said. So I think when customers are more when they're it's like, no, I want somebody that's good, that's going to do it, that's going to do it well, and where I can trust them or whatever that value is, and they're not all about the money. When people obsess over like the money and like it's got to be done cheap or whatever, like it has to be the very best deal. I got to get 10 different bids from 10 different people and all that. I think those kind of people can be hard to work for, and I
Yeah.
think it's because they don't they focus on the wrong thing a little bit. So I don't know if that makes sense or not to you, but that's a little different perspective than what you're saying.
It's a much more graceful way of saying what I was saying, but
Yeah, I think it relates. I think it's different but similar. So um,
yeah. No, there is a I've always appreciated working with folks who want quality because it did another thing for us too, and it still does today in my mobile lube business, and in my electrolyte business. It creates a lack of a need for a service person. I remember there was another window company in town, and they sold, gosh, they were still expensive, but their product was cheap. And they had a guy I went to church with who was their service guy who would go do all their warranty stuff. And he worked full time. He had 8 months of a list that was going to take him 8 months to get through at any given time of warranty claims to do for this company. And, they were one of the biggest companies in town as far as volume goes. But yeah, they had to have, there was him and another guy. There were two full time dudes that were working as just doing warranty claims. And we did way less business, but we never did warranty claims because our product held up.
yeah,
We
yeah,
just hardly ever went back for anything. So we didn't even have a person employed in that position.
yeah, yeah. Interesting.
So,
Yeah, I
well,
like
hey,
that.
let's switch gears here a little bit in this growth. So you've gone from a college kid painting some houses just to eat, make your way through college to you come and work for me, and then our company crashes, so you start spray and coat. I am curious, where did the name spray and coat come from?
I was trying to be creative, and Columbia, that was one of the companies we bought paint from. They were called Columbia Paint and Coatings. And so I was like I think I somehow got inspired from that, the coatings and whatever. And so it was just a creative, like, oh, spray and coat. Like it just came to me. I don't know exactly. And then it was just spray and coat. Like it had like no painting, just spray and coat. Okay. But then what I found was it was confusing. So,
Yeah.
so like, you guys sell paint? Is this a car painting company? So we added painting to the name. We added a brush. So the logo had a brush next to it for a long time, and rebranded last year and got rid of that. But yeah, that's
I
it.
vote for the brush to come back, by the way.
Yeah, you missed the brush. It's funny how logos. I was over at this guy's house today. We very unique home. It's a home on the park and Morrison Park. It's built on poles. It doesn't really have a foundation. It's got these big telephone-sized telephone poles in the ground. So it's a
Hmm.
5-level home built on the side of a hill. So it's the most unique home I've ever worked at. But we stained it like 7 years ago, and he wants us to come back and do it again. But yeah, and it's pretty cool. He's up there in age, and he's just like, yeah, I just trust you guys. I know you'll do a great job. It's not even a job. We give him a price ahead of time. It's too complicated, so it's just time and materials. It's a big job, but he just trusts us. But it was funny because he's getting up there in age. He probably doesn't see as good, maybe the memory, but he's like, he didn't recognize me. But then when I explained to him the logo, he's like, oh, I thought you were spraying coat. And I was like, oh, we're spraying coat. He's like, oh, okay. And then I was like, new logo. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, he remembered the old logo. So yeah, it's funny how branding, it makes a big difference. And so,
Oh, that's kind of fun, man. So, well, so in this growth of yours, what has been your biggest challenge?
yeah, the biggest challenge is figuring out how to get stuff done without you doing it yourself. And, that's, for me, one of the strengths I had was I could kind of do any part of the business if I had to. If I had to do the painting, I could do the painting. If I had to do the sales, I could do the sales. If I have to do the bookkeeping, I can do the bookkeeping. My just the way my brain works, I can kind of do the numbers, I can do the hands-on stuff, I can do the people stuff. And that was great in some ways, but also hard in other ways because it's hard to let go of things and not do them yourself the way you want them done. And the painting side, that was not very difficult. Dan was just better than me, and he would say, Mark, I don't need you here. Like, you don't need to be at the job, just go away. And we butted heads a little bit from time to time, but I really could just like let him do it. But then, like the sales side of it, I mean, that was hard, and it's still hard because everybody's going to sell a little different, right? And so trusting guys to do it, maybe a little bit different than how you would do it, but trying to hire the right people, let them do it, operationally, how we run crews and organize crews. I mean, so I'm kind of at the point in the business where my job is to not really do any of the tasks. It's to simply train and support people to do all the tasks. And if I'm doing things myself, um, it's just not where I need to be as a business owner. I have to put all my attention on managing and trying to, focus on vision and strategy and culture. Those are the three things that I've got to work on. But those are all very, touchy, and they're not as simple and straightforward as just doing the task yourself, right? And so I think all along that's always the challenge is getting other people involved, delegating and letting people do it. And delegating is not as simple. I like Dave Ramsey, he talks about this. Delegating is not just like assigning out to someone the task. Like, okay, you do it now. I don't do it
Right.
anymore. It's not. I mean, you could call that delegating, but health when it's done in a healthy way and a high performance way, you gotta get to the point where they're doing it as well as you're doing it, and that's a journey with people, and because you're ultimately responsible for all that stuff, and so you don't just get to let go of things, but you also can't control everything either, and that's a difficult balance.
It's an interesting thing you say that because you mentioned earlier that Dan did it better than you. How long did it take you before you could admit that?
Honestly, I don't think on the painting side, it wasn't a big deal. But I do remember on the sales side, I had my buddy James Rich working for me. And I remember after like a year or two, I remember being like, James, you're better at this than me. And he was, he's a natural people person, connects with people in ways I just can't. And so, and I'm happy when that happens, when I look at that somebody and say, "Hey, you're better than me," I'm like, that's the greatest thing I've heard all day,
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe for some people there's like a pride in that. For me, that's just not a challenge. Um, but you know, sometimes maybe it's difficult to recognize somebody's doing it, just not doing it the way I would do it, and and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
If they're still going to meet if they're going to get it done in a way that fits or is right, then let them do it. But that's sometimes hard to distinguish. So,
Or just sit and watch somebody do it differently and still succeed. I uh
yeah,
I think that's a big deal because it's guys who can grow a business are you really can only grow to a certain point if you really hold on to that ego about I want to be the best person here. Because if you don't hire people that are better than you in every area of the business, eventually you're just going to hit that lid and you can't grow past you. So I think that's important, man. Um,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if you started over, you're 18 years old again, would you do anything different?
Oh man, that's a good question.
We're not talking wife and kids here. We're just talking career.
Career.
I don't want to get you in trouble at home. No.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned is, you know, every business has its unique challenges, and sure, there's probably some businesses that, like over the last 100 years, there's some businesses that have died and no longer exist, you know, um, and so yeah, I mean, there's probably some businesses that are better than others, getting in at the right time. I mean, that probably matters to some degree, but I would say 99% of the time, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're if you're just cleaning homes and you're going to be a janitorial business, if you're going to do a painting business, if you're going to learn IT, be in the computer world, technology world, um, there's just opportunity in everywhere, right? Siding, windows, oil, electrolytes. Like there's a lot of different opportunities out there. Because I think so many people they get stuck on what business should I do, as in they have to pick the right business. And yeah, there's probably some thought that should go into exploring a business, looking what does it look like, for it to scale. Some businesses are going to scale easier than others, competition, all of that. But really, what I find is that all businesses have similar challenges. I got a friend, he owns a mechanic shop, you know, and just talking with him a couple of days ago, just kind of their general numbers, and it was like very similar to our numbers, right? Like the cost of goods, what's our direct, materials and labor, and it's just different, even though he's producing double what I do per hour, but he also has to pay their labor a lot higher, and he has to, do this and do that differently, and there's different liability and all these things, and so two very different businesses, and maybe I'm selling $80 an hour, he's selling 160 an hour. Yeah, but he has different constraints. And so, my whole point here is, yeah, I could look at it and say, is there better businesses to go into than the painting business? More profitable, whatever? Yeah, probably. Plumbers, electricians, they produce twice what we do per hour, but different constraints, different labor, everything's different. So I think that's a long way of answering your question and say, probably not, you know. It's been a
No, that's
fun
fair, man. I,
business.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said because it's easy to look at someone else's gross dollar amount and think, oh my gosh, they're amazing. But you don't see the net dollar amount. You don't see what it looks like. And so, you know, you and you've heard me say before, uh, a well-run business it's a pleasure, and it's a fun thing to do. It's almost like playing a game. A poorly run business, it's like a bad marriage. It's just terrible, and it overcomes your life and your emotions, and so yeah, a lot of wisdom in what you just said, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, listen, this is the Go Earn Your Salt podcast. When you hear the term "Go Earn Your Salt," what comes to mind?
Sweating, doing something
Say that
hard,
again.
sweating, go earn your salt. Like, go sweat, go do something hard. Um, and I think, your brand is for people that are going to do hard things, and they're going to go, and they're going to earn it, right? And they're going to go earn it. And so I love that. I love that tagline, and that's what comes to mind. Hard work, yeah, sweat, yep.
Awesome, man. Um, what's your favorite pastime?
Favorite pastime? We talked at the beginning about riding dirt bikes, and that was definitely my main hobby as a kid, growing up, and really took a break from that for a long time. 15 years really did not ride dirt bikes just because I was in a different season, right? I was when I bought one of our first vehicles, I I sold my street bike, I sold my dirt bike, but now I'm in this new season, and so I got the adventure bike, and we've done a couple 3-day adventure rides, and it kind of reminded me like I do love riding dirt bikes, so
Yeah.
that's one of
It's
my
awesome,
favorites,
man. Adventure biking's like the old man version of dirt biking. You realize that, right?
definitely.
All right, dude. You're eating a hamburger and they put the veggies on the bottom underneath the patty. Is that good or bad?
It's fine. I just flip it over, I guess.
Sesame seeds on the bottom? Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I don't know. I'll have to debate
You're eating it anyways, huh? You're
the
not taking it apart and putting it back together the
the
right way.
veggies on the bottom. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd be too concerned about that, but it does seem a
Oh
little
my gosh.
off, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's way off, man. It's wrong. It's immoral. I'm
Yeah.
playing. So, scariest moment of your life?
Scariest moment in my life. One of the things that comes to mind was I was I was climbing Mount Adams. So this is a 12,000-foot peak in north of Hood River on the Columbia, and me and a couple old friends decided to climb it. So it's a glacier at the top, and so we hiked up. We got to the top of the glacier. And then on our way down, there was basically like a little cliff of and what you can do is it had like a almost like a cliff, but then it had like a little area where people what they would do is you would slide down the center of this glacier. Do you remember this story? And anyway, so it was kind of
I
like a
do.
slide, and you would slide down the glacier on your back, and you don't want to go over off the cliff part, but if you went down the center where it had been carved down, you would use your axe that you're hiking with, and you would grind it into the glacier, and you would slide down it. Well, I was in this situation where I was kind of like halfway down it, and I had to climb back up it, and it's hard to explain the details, but it was sketchy. It was really sketchy of us like falling off the edge of this glacier cliff. And so we made it out okay, but it was a precarious situation. I ended up breaking my ankle on the way down there, and that was no good. But that was a sketchy situation. That always sticks in my brain, so that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, man, that could have definitely turned out worse for sure. All right. Another question on the lighter side here. Were you ever kicked out of school? You ever get suspended?
Well, I got a major discipline, so I'd never been kicked out of school, but I did get a major discipline for eating a rat eye in zoology class.
Say that one more time.
Do you remember that story?
You ate a what?
A rat eye.
Like a rodent.
Yeah, we were dissecting a rat in zoology class, and the eye, there's like five of us all around this table, and the eye is like tiny, it's disintegrated because it's in the whatever chemical. And it was tiny, like the size of a shriveled pea, but maybe even smaller than that. And I'm holding it in my hand, and everybody's around me is like, "I'll give you $20 if you swallow it." And so, everybody was like, "Yeah, I'll give you $20." So I was like, "Oh, I just swallowed it." And of course, the whole class like erupts, like, "Oh, Mark just ate the rat." So the teacher gets involved. They take me to the principal, and they give me a major discipline. And they wrote on the paper, I wish I had this. Student ate a rat in class. even though student knew they were not supposed to. So they wrote on it.
So your teacher actually said, "Don't eat the rat."
I don't know, but that they said I ate a rat. I was like, no, I didn't eat a rat. I ate a rat eye. So they gave me major discipline, and my mom thought it was hilarious. And that was the most trouble I ever got into in school. So
Oh my
you probably
gosh.
went to school a couple times. I did not, but I did get a major discipline.
Oh, that's probably you have never told me that story. I'm really glad to hear that, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Bucket list challenge, man. You got something on your bucket list you want to do?
You know, I really want to learn Spanish. I want to be fluent in Spanish. That's one of my bucket list items. Um, I'm not a big traveler, so I think lots of people are like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. Um, that's it. I want to learn Spanish. That's a bucket list thing for me. Not sure exactly why, but I would love to be able to be fluent in Spanish one
Oh,
day.
that's cool. Book recommendation. What's a book you'd recommend everyone read?
I think if it kind of depends on what which what you do. But if you manage a team, if you're involved with a team, um, one of my favorites is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, and I love that book, and I've revisited it a couple times over the years, and it just is a really good, easy breakdown of what the importance of just building trust and all the way up to focusing on results. And it's one of my favorites.
Nice, man. Well, where can spray and coat painting be found?
Yeah, the easiest way
You mentioned your website earlier.
the easiest way to get a hold of us is probably through the website, sprayandcoat.com. Um, we are, we're on social media and doing a lot more videos right now. So I've recorded like about 40 videos in the last few weeks. So we'll be dropping those, every couple days here soon. So I'm excited about that.
Nice, man. Well, my friend, I appreciate you being on here. We're now in 6 minutes into this thing, so I appreciate you being here, Mark. We've gotten together so many times over the years. It's just been like this ongoing thing, and I want you to know how much your friendship means to me, and always having somebody to celebrate wins, and
Yeah.
sometimes somebody to cry on your shoulder when I'm going through it.
Yeah. Yeah, likewise, Riley. Man, I appreciate it. It is fun. We got a lot of history, and we've been through a lot, and it's fun to go through and just tell some old stories, and just kind of revisit the journey that we've been on for over 20 years now. So yeah, I appreciate you. Grateful for you as a friend, man, and I'm glad you're doing this. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, you're a good dude. So Mark, go in your salt, man.
All right, talk to you soon.
Hey, you've just finished up this episode, and I've got to know, do you know someone who's a getting after it kind of person? Someone who is earning their salt every day? If so, I would like to have them on the show. So have them message me directly at the Go Earn Your Salt podcast on Instagram. Let's see if we can get them on the show. Have a great day. You know what to do. Go earn your salt.